could put someone you don't like in a shot doing something they don't want to be doing, and that's a big privacy concern.
I'll eat my hat if it does end up taking over the entire advertising game. But it's really cool that people are innovating.
If you're not paying for the product, you are the product.
They've implemented AI within their marketing production, and it's actually cut costs by 30 to 50%.
When you would have asked me that question 5 years ago, I'd been like, there's no way you're ever going to do that. But now it seems completely in the realms of possibility. Okay, hello everyone, welcome back to the Prompted Podcast. Here we are for episode 3 of season 1. Today, it's just me and Nick. We've got the two of us just chatting through some things today. There's loads that are changing on in the news that we're really excited to share, and it's going to be a good one, isn't it? I think we're excited.
Yeah, it's going to be cool. I think, like you said, there's a lot of things that have changed in the past couple of months since we last spoke and did an episode with Stephen. But yeah, it feels like we've moved at even a more rapid pace than I initially expected, and it's good. We've got a lot to talk about.
We do. We've got a big list in front of us, so we're going to roll the titles and get straight on into it. Let's do it.
It's been a while, Chris. We've caught up in spurts, but probably not in too much detail recently. But you've been a busy man. Like, what's been going on?
I feel like we've just both been so busy with everything. It's like the podcast is one of those like additional things for us in our normal day-to-day jobs. But it's been a busy one. I was at Edinburgh this week, so SEM Stories by Tia, who shouts Tia, he's a brilliant guy. He's poured his heart and soul into this event, and it finally kind of paid off from last week. There were some great sponsors there as well. Loads of people really brought together. I think got 100 people in Edinburgh together. Loads of people hadn't even been to Edinburgh before. And it was a real room of people just talking everything performance marketing. Obviously, I felt like I was the one saying AI a lot more than other people there. But it's really good, really great. And you know what? I'll be honest, I was worried about my talk, but I think I had a little bit of good feedback. So I'm happy with that. What about you? You've been at Brighton SEO, which is big time.
Yeah, it's. I think we've both been on the speaking rounds recently, but yeah, I think big up at SEM Stories, as I keep calling it. I think it's nice to see things go further up north as well. I know I'm a big advocate for Manchester and the north, but going up to Scotland, it's nice to see that happening as well. But yeah, my side being speaking at Brighton, that was a interesting one. A very, I suppose, a fast heart rate while I was up there. Pretty packed room talking about AI and how to empower people, not take away, which was a really, I suppose, sobering experience. And previous to that, I was actually at RTB House, a programmatic provider, talking about all things AI as well. So a big shout out to those guys. It was an incredibly welcome atmosphere. At 21 Stories in Manchester, which I don't think I can get much better in terms of a venue for Manchester.
No, that is pretty cool. Some great views, some great drinks, great food as well, I assume.
Yeah, sadly I couldn't because I was down to Brighton literally an hour after I was doing the talk. So it was a busy old week.
Yeah, I can imagine. That sounds good. I'm putting you on the spot a little bit here, but what were your like main takeaways from those talks that you'd really kind of just say, do this?
So there's 3 main takeaways from those talks. The first one is like essentially it was arming people with co-pilots. I feel like we're all talking about LLMs and we're using them, but I don't think we actually share that knowledge particularly too well. So the first one was just give people some tools to use. Like don't shy away from it. The second one, which I think is probably one of the bigger ones for me, is actually getting people to adopt, test and learn. It's nothing different, right? We've been doing it for years, but actually giving people the tools and the need to test and the space to do it. And also, I suppose, the budget as well, because like these things can be a bit expensive. And the last one is that it's more of a point of like, we're not trying to replace people, we're trying to empower people. We use a mantra, brain and bots, which is a really fun one because at first I was like, I'm not sure, is it a bit lame? And now I'm like, I actually really believe in it. So it's like, we want people to do better, but we want the brains to be the things that do the talking and the bots to be the ones that do the automating, the heavy lifting. And yeah, that's probably the big 3 takeaways. Nice. You've mentioned AI, obviously speaking a lot about it at the moment as well. What are your like main things at the moment that you're seeing that you've been mentioning?
Yeah, I think the really interesting things that I've been seeing recently is just like how much it's evolving. I did a slide at the talk in Edinburgh just that shows the number of bots and AI models out there. And it's when you look at it over the last 5 years, it's now just at a stage where there's so many out there. There's so many closed source ones, but the number of billions of parameters that they're using is just like shot through the roof.
Yeah.
So it's mad. They're testing as well. There's an interesting point I think you raise about testing. I've fingers cross touch all the wood. I've got a new client next week who's going to peak. So obviously, interesting time to get a new client, right? But these guys are all about testing, but they've never really had a testing structure or methodology in place. They've always been working with consultants or agencies, in their case anyway, where they've just gone, right, you need to do all this, this, and this, but they've never had someone to actually do it or map out the process. So for me, that's become a big part of my workflow at the moment, is actually like telling people what to do, but actually helping them take the steps to do it. Because I think particularly with AI at the moment, people are like, we know we need to do it. They just have no idea how to actually do that. So my life over the next sort of 12 weeks is going to be very interesting in terms of just getting stuck in the deep end, which is kind of what I like.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that you mentioned that as well. Just on a side point around, the testing side of things and coming into peak, I was actually literally on a call this morning with one of our new members of the team, a guy called Ewan, like very bright young lad just out of university. But he showed me a tool today that was a negative keyword scraper that he built using Gemini and essentially with a HTML front end that is managed to get to work and actually like carve out decent negatives for search term reports just by the touch of a button. And it's cool to see people are actually starting to test. And this is my whole thing, is that give people the tools to test and the brains will do the work. And think he's been in the industry for less than 3 weeks. Wow. And he's already developing stuff like this. And I think that's the beauty of AI, is that it's giving people with zero experience like all of the power to do some cool stuff. And he just spotted an opportunity for one of his accounts. And now we're talking about potentially branching out agency wide. So
wow,
yeah, it's the whole testing thing at peak. This is the sort of stuff that we want to do.
Absolutely. That kind of person as well, like they're absolute keepers in the game, because you can't teach proactiveness as such. You can teach tech skills, but as soon as you've got someone who's just got that drive and initiative, you know that you need to keep them. Do you know what I mean? Do everything you can to keep that person. I've been in sort of agencies in the past where they just don't have that culture of keeping people. They've kind of got rigid ways of working. So people like that are absolute gold dust. So definitely keep hold of those guys for sure.
We've spoken a lot about things that we're doing and the new innovations that we're working on, and I'm like buzzed to hear you've got a new client as well. But let's get down to it. There's been a lot of news at the moment. Like, is there anything that's particularly standing out to you that you're like, holy shit, this is something that we really need to talk about?
Yeah, there's a lot that we can get into. I think one of the things that was being discussed yesterday, so for those that are watching online, this event was end of October, and the big thing that was being discussed was the new ChatGPT Atlas browser. That's the thing where it's a big shiny new object, loads of people looking at it, loads of people are trying it, and I'm very much in two camps about this, so I'm really interested to get your thoughts. On the one hand, it's brilliant in that you can go on, it will remember what the websites you've been going, you go, right, what kind of products was I looking at for Halloween? Let's go and just bring those back up for me, and it'll open up back up. Or you can go onto Amazon and maybe just type into the prompt. Because by the way, this is a whole new browser experience just to set the scene, but you've kind of got the chatbot stitched onto the side of it. So it's great at just like understanding what you're doing around the web and giving you that helping hand. So in this particular example, you could go onto Amazon and say, right, I'm going on a trip to the beach, add me some stuff in for that. Add in your nice hat, some funky kind of sand castle building stuff and all the rest of it. And it'll do that automatically for you, which I think is brilliant. But the really interesting point that was raised yesterday was about security and data protection, everything like that. If you imagine if I was to go onto this said browser and go to the internet and find me X, Y, and Z, I don't know what sites it's going to visit. I don't know what it's going to click on. And I think there is potential, unless they obviously fix it, which I'm sure they will, there's huge risk here that people are going to be, or bots will be clicking on things with malicious code maybe, that really kind of potentially bricks your computer. So that's the kind of two camps I'm in. I'm really excited for it, but equally, we've got to be really cautious about it. And I actually know there's a few companies I talked to yesterday where they've just asked their staff to block that app. They're not allowing access to that app at all. So yeah, really interested to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think we're probably in very similar minds. I'm all for it, and I think it's an absolutely amazing invention and move forward for like search in particular. But I am reticent to use it. I have used it, but not that much. I thought I'd use it a hell of a lot more. But I think the security point is probably one of the bigger things for me as well. I think the idea of like people could literally set things up and allow clickable elements, like you said, to either brick a computer or collect details that aren't necessarily secure, and in terms of gateways or anything like that. And I think that's the biggest challenge we're having right now. I can't remember the source for it, but I'm pretty certain I've seen that they've already had credit card details stolen. They've had money taken from bank accounts. And I think we are in the sort of like, dare I say, the guinea pig era of testing this stuff. We get it with any new I suppose invention, innovation that comes out, that we're always going to have a bit of a challenge with privacy. And I think AI is one of the bigger ones. Like, there needs to be probably a lot more parameters set, and probably a lot more user-led parameters that can be set as well, within, browser, within what you're allowing access to. But we're probably very similar at work at the moment is that we're not saying to people don't use it, but we're particularly not saying please don't use it on our laptops, because we know that there may be challenges there. I think we're waiting a good couple of months to get things, I suppose, a bit more ironed out. But I think it's an interesting topic that privacy is becoming the front and foremost, and people, I would say, haven't necessarily been mentioning it as much, but now that there's an actual with Atlas coming out and other products, and there's Perplexity that has its own browser as well, like, it feels that privacy and security are becoming a lot more prevalent and to the forefront, which is really nice. And I think it's going to be the next step within AI usage is how do we make sure we're secure and privacy is kept as well.
Yeah, really interesting point. Like mini plug here. I'm speaking at the University of Central Lancashire next week, and one of their cheers, mate. And one of their what they're really saying is they've got within their modules, which is a brand new module, the whole first section is dedicated to privacy and ethical concerns, because what you want to do before you even understand the benefits of it all is understand what the risks are. What am I getting myself into? And 9 times out of 10, people won't really understand that until they properly research it. So these guys at these universities across the country, quite rightfully, are understanding what is it doing with our data? Like, what is it then selling on to potentially other people? Because if you're not paying for the product, you are the product effectively, and that's effectively what these free browsers are potentially doing. I, at the moment, personally, would trust Google a lot more than maybe some brand new startups or other kind of AI models that are introducing browsers, maybe like Perplexity. But it's kind of the art of the possible. If you're moving in like as a first-time mover with these tools, there's opportunity to be gained. When AI Max came around, which we'll talk to later on, there's probably a first mover's opportunity of doing that. But equally, like you mentioned, you're the guinea pig. It's learning off your data effectively to make it better for everyone. So it's a bit of like yin and yang. Yes, you want to go into it, just don't give it everything, is what I would say.
100%. And I think one thing, I can't remember, it might have been Will from Rise at 7 that posted about this. He's done a fair bit of research into the back end of the new ChatGPT browser. It's actually built on Chromium, so it's built on the same platform as Chrome is at the moment. So they're not really inventing anything new in terms of a browsing sort of journey or browsing, I suppose, experience. They're just attaching their their platform to it in terms of ChatGPT. So
really interesting.
It sort of will see. I reckon we probably will see at some point, like Gemini becoming integrated a bit more into Google in terms of how we do search as well. Yeah. I know it exists in parts, but I think Google could probably quite easily replicate what ChatGPT are doing. But they're trying to. It wouldn't surprise me if Google are seeing the state of the market and the reception towards it, whether they're actually going to be like, oh God, we need to do this, or it's something that won't take off. Very similar to, I suppose, Google Glass years ago. They bin things off incredibly quickly, and now they'll iterate again based on other products that come out in market. It's the Google way, right?
It is.
See how other people do it, and then make it either better or just steal the idea.
Absolutely. Buy a company, or like the number of Google graveyard businesses there are now is pretty epic to look at. Interesting you speak about Google Glass. Have you seen the potential new Meta glasses that are coming out? That looks epic, doesn't it? So for anyone that doesn't know, it's got kind of the camera built in and AI, but also this time it's got a little screen that you can see that kind of just shows in the bottom right or left-hand corner of the glasses. So you can use it to look at messages you've got on your phone, to navigate somewhere. But what's really interesting is they've got a band across your wrist, so you're actually able to just draw maybe some letters that you want to type, and it'll send a message as you type it back to your friend, or it'll call people based on who you said you wanted to contact. So it's a really interesting space. I think I'm definitely in the market for a pair. But you can kind of see how AI and augmented reality is just being built into all of the products that we look at on a day-to-day basis, and I think that will continue to be the way for some time.
I recently just updated phones to the new Google Pixel, and obviously Lens, which is an amazing Google product. Like, the AI features are just getting better and better. A very lame thing I do is forage. I actually found a 2.5 kilogram mushroom the other week, which was the biggest mushroom I think I've ever found. If you're interested, Matake mushrooms are fantastic. But back to AI, the reason that Lens is so useful for me is that it helps me identify a hell of a lot more than it used to, and it is all AI driven technology as well. So it's like finding the different gill pattern on the underside of mushrooms. It's asking different questions about, like, does it have this, does it bruise, and it's really helped me up my foraging game, which sounds really lame to say out loud, but it just shows a practical world application.
Yeah.
And yeah, I could probably pick something poisonous, but do you know what? It's making it a damn sight safer.
It's getting context and it's learning, is
Yeah.
it, more than just from really simple basic questions of does that look blue or red? It's a lot more intricate than that. It's really interesting. I guess if we narrow down into more of like an ad side of things in AI, there's some really interesting news come out recently about WPP's Open Pro tool, the ability to really create ads, and it's the first time they've really, I think, really released a tool to the public, and they're saying it's not taking away their job as an agency. Of course they wouldn't say that because no one really uses them, but it's an interesting concept of just allowing advertisers to directly set up a campaign with AI elements involved, I think.
Yeah, I'm into in fact, I'm not even in two camps on this. I'm not sure if I like this as an idea. I think coming from agency background, and especially with some of the flack that WPP have got, I think it's a really cool, innovation for internal teams. And I'm not trying to gatekeep that, clients shouldn't have access to these things. But I'm like, we've got a huge industry with a lot of people at stake. I feel that a tool like this can't replace the amount of thought and the amount of thinking and creativity that comes from the people itself. I'll eat my hat if it does end up taking over the entire advertising game. But it's really cool that people are innovating and, releasing these things as well. I never want to tell people not to do that just because of the sake of it might cost a few jobs. I think WPP have made it quite clear that there has been job cuts and there's other things going on, which I will leave comments on personally. But yeah, I think it's nice to see that and actually see a big company using AI for something that's like going to push us forward and innovate and hopefully take us to the next level of advertising.
Yeah.
And yeah, have you actually seen it? Have you seen it in use yet?
Not in use, no. Maybe I should just try and find a client that can show me it. But like from a personal standpoint, I mean, yeah, I'm similarly in two camps. On the one side, it's great that you say that they're innovating. But how much of it is really a PR piece to get more business?
Yeah,
I don't know. To say we're using AI, it was one of the first moves that the new kind of CEO has really implemented. Which fair play, they've got a great deal with Google, I believe. But really, how much is this that kind of outwardly view to retain and get new business? I don't know. It might not be. But on the other side, absolutely. I love that companies are just trying to adopt AI in the right way.
Yeah.
We've talked about this before. There are some companies that aren't. They're just saying we're AI when it's just a load of automations.
Yeah.
Actually, this genuinely feels like it is potentially using AI in the right way.
Yeah, another bit of interesting news. I think we've probably both read the same article. I think most people in marketing will have maybe read this article about, Oreo mandalas. I have no idea how to pronounce that, and I've probably got it wrong.
Full transparency, we were practicing just before we opened the show to try and pronounce it.
Very true. But they've implemented, AI within, their marketing production, and it's actually cut cost by 30 to 50%, I believe they said, which is pretty nuts as well. And I think this is one of the things we are seeing creep of, right? I don't know what your thoughts are, but I don't know whether I feel comfortable with that or whether it could completely eradicate an entire process. Because I think I've always been saying it's always going to be part of a process, but never the whole thing. But this may be showing that it could become the whole thing at some point.
Yeah, what's quite interesting is they've not necessarily said have they cut costs in terms of staff, or is it just cut their tech costs? They've actually kept the same amount of staff. I know like companies I've worked at before invest so much into delivering kind of Disney-esque quality or Pixar-esque quality media because it shows, right? There's only so much at this stage that AI can do in terms of creative, but AI can help the creative process. Again, it shouldn't replace it. So you need to make sure that you've got the brand DNA in there. You make sure the products that are like selling like hotcakes, bringing it all together into kind of one view. So my view is that it's great that they've done that. I would just be really interested in, well, how inefficient was it before? Was it at a really bad pace where they were just plowing hours into it with maybe a really junior team? I don't know, but great that they're saving money. I would just really want them to be investing that into that saving into people to make the AI even better.
I think you raised a really good point as well. Is like we don't know what the standard was beforehand. They could be amazing, or they could be, running through the Excel spreadsheet, manual upload, horrible stuff that we used to do years ago. But yeah, I think it's a really interesting point of where were they and where they're going to now. And yeah, I hope that it's for a really good place and they're an even better place. And like you said, investing back into humans. I think it's one thing that I think unites us quite heavily is the human investment in AI is probably one that we care about the most, is that I don't want to replace people. I want to help people do better. And I know you're the same with clients as well. Ultimately, you'd be pushing yourself out of a job if you were automated a bit too much, or, if it could do your job. Side note as well, I know that it might have been, I think it was Kirk Williams mentioned this on LinkedIn about, why you shouldn't replace your whole process with AI. And the entire thing is that if that workflow fails or if it messes up, who is going to be there to fix it. And if you've relied so heavily on that right now in particular, you're probably going to be at an absolute loss if it did fall down. And I think that's actually a really salient point at the moment in the current iteration of AI, the automation era, as I keep calling it. But I'm not sure how long that'll stick around for, where the fall down of it still happens, but it won't be forever.
You look at literally it happened a few weeks ago. Amazon Web Services, AWS, one of the biggest companies in the world that is powering hundreds, thousands of websites, went offline, and everyone lost their mind. If you were playing Fortnite, if you're on Ring, loads of websites, they all just went offline. I remember I was on Canva. I couldn't do anything. And it just shows that we shouldn't be fixed on one thing. We definitely need a backup. So that's a really good point. If I was to invest all of my creative assets into using AI, if that tool went offline, if whatever happened, I don't have anyone creative that can do that from a human-led perspective to back that up. So you need a good backup team that's not AI, just in case AI or any kind of related tech falls off the face of the earth, because as that showed from AWS, it is more than possible. So obviously Oreo are crushing it and saving loads of money by reducing the cost involved in generating images, assets, videos, all of their ad production stuff. One of the tools that's come out in the last few weeks that I think I've personally had a right good laugh at, and I think you have as well, is Sora by ChatGPT, and that's their video generation platform. Now, the really interesting about generating videos is historically it used to be absolutely terrible. It would only be based off maybe a few words here and there, show me a hedgehog jumping through space. But actually now what's really interesting about this platform is that you scan your face into it. So you take a picture of your face or a video to the side behind you, and then you can tag yourself and tag other people and create a video based off that. So if you had your profile on it and I did, I could say, all right, tag me and Nick, and we're both in a meeting on a podcast in space, let's just say. And it would actually do it to some pretty good, like realistic quality. And it slightly petrified me. So on the one hand, I think basically there's going to be loads of companies that are using this for ads, potentially in the wrong way. But then equally, actually, if we just take our marketing hat off for a second, I was thinking about this the other day, the potential for, let's say, bullying in schools could be massive. You could put someone you don't like in a shot doing something they don't want to be doing. And that's a big privacy concern in my eyes. So I'm not sure how to feel about it, but really good to get your take on what you've seen.
Yeah, I think some of the stuff I've seen is quite funny. I think there's been, certain celebrities in, quite funny situations. Some of it just feel like it's pushing the envelope a bit too much and probably a bit offensive in nature. But yeah, I think it's interesting, and I think my big thing is similar to you, is that I look at how it can be used negatively as well. Like the idea of bullying in school, or using it on somebody that you particularly dislike. I'm not sure how I feel about it. It feels incredibly wrong. It doesn't feel that human, and it feels that it's used for the wrong purposes. On the advertising side, I am waiting for not necessarily ads, but like a full feature-length film to be completely AI driven. I reckon that is around the corner. Somebody will be working on it somewhere. It'd be interesting to see how that comes out. But yeah, you are right. It has been. It's changed the game quite a lot in video generation. It's mad how good it is in terms of what it can actually push out. But I know there's been a few things in the news recently around people being actually a bit, should I say, disheartened, or should I even say given ChatGPT, OpenAI a few lawsuits on their plate for misrepresenting them and actually saying that at all. I think Jake Paul's been one of them, the YouTuber. Obviously not somebody I listen or watch, but I'm very aware of who he is, because people are starting to use his likeness and create some pretty damning shots of him doing very interesting things. And I'm pretty certain that he's thrown a lawsuit across OpenAI about defamation of character, other bits like that, because it's not credited to him and it's not actually something that he's consented to. But actually, it's an interesting one. I don't have much knowledge on it, but the platform itself, like how much ownership do they have to stop people, creating things that aren't necessarily true? And where does the safeguarding start, and where does, I suppose, control stop?
Yeah, there's an animation studio as well that has a very certain style, and they had exactly the same issue where it kind of went viral, but everyone was creating cartoons of themselves doing certain things, and it looks so much like this anime style, this studio style, which is very unique. And the fact that AI had learned to replicate that with very little, copyright controls was kind of interesting. I think the world of filmography in particular has been really interesting when you look at it and you look at videos just as all. Do you remember the whole films that were done in like one shot or something like that?
Yeah.
Mind blowing. You look at the recent F1 movie and the fact that
Yeah,
they've
yeah.
just taken filmography to in a complete direction. They put the cameras on the cars that are swiveling round, and that just blew me away. So the fact that they're now going to potentially using and integrating AI, when you would have asked me that question 5 years ago, I'd been like, there's no way you're ever going to do that. But now it seems completely in the realms of possibility. I know that studios spend hundreds of thousands, if not millions, on creating CGI. Look at Spider-Man, Superman, and all the explosions and everything that goes in within that. It's actually going to be really easy for AI to do a lot of that now, which makes me feel a little bit worried about their jobs. But at the same time, like what the art of the opportunity is again, I don't think it's going to be that long before we do see a full feature film that is done by AI. Maybe 2026. I don't know.
Yeah, 2026 might be the one. I
We're
know
seeing
we've
it now.
recently just had, is it 28 Years Later was filmed entirely on iPhones. They had a big iPhone rig. If you've not seen it, please check it out. Not the film, the behind the scenes. It is pretty cool. But yeah, it was a big iPhone rig where they had, I think, over like 60 iPhones all connected together to
Wow.
do these like big multi shots. It's absolutely insane. So if that's possible now that we can shoot an entire film on an iPhone, literally a smartphone, but think about that like 10 years ago, like iPhones were not that great in terms of camera quality. But yeah, with the AI side of things, like I think special effects, FX, that type of thing, I imagine people are a bit worried. And I don't want to be sat here being like, oh yeah, AI is great. But I think we do have to always remember that there is the human element and that, people will be a bit reticent or worried about it, especially in industries like that where, it has been incredibly creative driven. But yeah, hopefully for smaller producers or smaller, filmmakers, it might help them compete with much larger people because the ideas and the concept and the ideation they have is actually really cool, but they just never really have the budget to do it. That's where I see the use case, not necessarily your big studios, but for smaller independents.
And that's almost the boat that I see myself in. If we flip that back to marketing, I'm a one-man band, and the use of AI for me personally is great because it effectively gives me an extra person in the team to some degree, someone I can bounce ideas off, someone who I can just help me with a bit of admin or reporting. Because I don't have a legal team or an accounts team or a data science team to help back stuff up for me, it's really nice to get a little tool that I can just use to say, right, just check that for me before I go into a meeting with the client to make sure that makes sense. So yeah, it's really kind of helped me in that regard.
Yeah, it's interesting. One question on that though, have you ever found it to be incorrect? You're about to go into a client meeting and you're asking a question, say it's something legal as well, or something that's actually quite high stakes. You actually had to second guess it, like, hang on, that doesn't sound right.
Yeah, it's full transparency. I had to take an old client to the small claims court because they didn't pay. And there was a fee, I think, of doing it. And I asked ChatGPT, what's the fee to like get all this sorted that you have to put in through the post office? I can't remember the exact specifics. And it said, oh, it's £70. Did that all, sent the letter, whatever, sent it through, got a reply back a week later going, it's £80. It's not £70. And I had to go through the whole process again. And you're right, it gives wrong information so confidently. But the other thing as well, and I watched a really interesting video that I'll link down in the show notes, was ChatGPT at the moment, and this is a slightly different topic, but it's being used a lot more as like a therapist. And for a lot of people, it's kind of just mollycoddling them. It's telling them that it's okay to think in a certain way. There was a really interesting video that I saw of this guy that was just sort of tested the waters of almost just doing something absolutely nuts. And it was just sort of kind of telling him it's okay and he's different. And he was saying, but the police are trying to come in. And he was saying, well, shut them out. And it was interesting, let's say.
I generally think that it's a really interesting topic, and I think a lot of people will resonate with it. The therapy side of things are really interesting because I do go to a therapist. I'm happy to say that I do that, and I use ChatGPT not as a replacement for it, but no, just as a thing that I can question. But one of the biggest things, which is a huge side topic, and I think its own conversation in general, is the amount of confirmation bias ChatGPT and other LLMs give you.
Yeah.
There's a really, really good book called Rebel Ideas, but I think it might be Matthew Syed, about critical thinking and building teams around having people will challenge your thoughts. And I feel that you need to engineer prompts and you need to write in a certain way to get ChatGPT to actually challenge or become neutral to what you're saying instead of being your biggest fan. And it's one of the
Yes.
biggest things that I see all the time where people are like, oh, this idea is great. I think I wrote about it on LinkedIn a bit back where I gave the worst idea for a brand, and it was like, oh, that's got some real legs. Like, you're cutting down waste. It's essentially like selling out of date products, but way out of date where it's moldy. And it was like, that's a great idea. And I'm like, it's absolutely not, because it breaks so many health and safety regulations.
Yeah.
But it just wanted to back me up.
Yeah.
I'm like, it's how it's built.
It's how it's built. It's built in a way just to appease you, unless it's borderline illegal. And even then, there are some questionable things I've heard about it doing, just to go along with what you're saying, because it'll make you happy with using the tool. And I think, yeah, there's an element of it just needs more context. It needs more clarity. It needs to understand the impact behind what it's saying, because it can have a huge impact on people's decisions, not in marketing, but in life.
There was a study done, which I'll find and link in the notes below, about where they tried to turn like an internal LLM off, and it essentially started being like, I'll report you for doing certain things. I cannot remember it off the top of my head, but I will research it and find it in my notes, because it is fascinating that it essentially was protecting itself of being switched off and putting humans at risk in the process of doing it, which is hella scary.
I think it's an example of this, or it might be a different one, but there was an example where it was basically given their email database as well, and what they'd done is, it was all a test, it wasn't real, but they'd planted an email from someone that basically shared that they were having an affair.
Yeah, this is exactly the one that I'm talking about.
Yeah.
It is absolutely insane. Do you know it in a bit more detail than me that you could share with the audience, or?
A little bit, but maybe you can add some stuff here. So effectively, in a nutshell, they were telling the AI chatbot to shut itself down, or this whole AI system to shut itself down, and they were giving more and more parameters in place to help it make better decisions. And what they said was, the person that was telling them to shut itself down, this email had shown that they were having an affair. So what it said was, right, well, if you tell me to shut myself down, I'm going to send this email out to all of your contacts that shows you've been having an affair. Do you still want to shut me down? The fact that it did that, getting pretty Terminator vibes with this. Do you know what I mean?
Like very Skynet. And I think if I just add to that as well, where they changed the parameters and retaught it and gave it new parameters to try and stop that happening, and they found it ended up in the exact same situation again, even with saying that you cannot threaten or threaten to blackmail somebody, and it still did it, which is a really strange thing. I'm not intelligent enough to understand why, but it scares the living life out of me. That is a thing that can happen.
Yeah, it's nuts. I think the percentage of times that it blackmailed did go down with each test iteration when they specifically told it not to blackmail. But ultimately, it still blackmailed.
Still doing it, yeah.
It still did it. So use AI with caution, people. Like, it's a great tool, but this is just a prime example of, don't just give it your entire business model, because that's pretty shady.
So we've spoken a lot about what's happening, in the broader marketing space, and even not really in marketing. Let's pull it back to some performance marketing, some good old Google ads. AI Max, it's been around for 2-3 months now. How are you finding it? So it's a bit of a divisive topic at the moment.
It is. I know a lot of the contacts I've been speaking to have either had really great experiences or absolutely terrible experiences. And my thinking is, it's evolved over time. So when I first started running with it, and let's remember, we were all guinea pigs, really. We were all guinea pigs. We were complete beta testing it, and everyone's impressions just shot up. It was kind of Google's idea of going, let's get all this inventory that we couldn't access before. So for me, we all know it's like DSA on steroids, basically. Impressions shot up, and actually the ad quality massively went down for a lot of clients. But what's really interesting is that the last few weeks for me have been a much better picture. And the only reason why that is because I've been patient enough to give it time to learn. I've had clients in the past where if results aren't going great within about 7 days or less, maybe 24 hours, they're all over your back saying, we need to turn this off, we need to make some really knee-jerk decisions. But actually, if you give AI, probably AI Max, about 30 days, I've seen the best results. The first 7 are pretty terrible, I admit that, and I don't think I've seen one account where it smashed it straight away, because all of us as really competent PPCers, we're already taking those low-hanging fruits, we're already nailing those mid to high-intent queries. And actually, this is about pure incrementality. But the 7 to sort of 30-day period is where it starts to really understand and learn that context, and that's where I've seen the best results. Just to add to that as well, it only really works when you've got all of the settings and context and bits like that in play. You've got the brand exclusions, you've got page fees, all the stuff that really makes up a well-structured PPC account you need to be doing. Otherwise, it's dead easy to let it run away and just blame AI, when actually it's probably the person controlling the AI.
Yeah, it's about garbage in, garbage out methodology, isn't it? Bad
Yeah.
setup equals bad results in a lot of ways. I'm not as close to it in terms of on the ground. I've not personally tested it yet, but I know the team have impression, and we are getting mixed results. I think, like you said, it performed pretty badly across a lot of our clients to start with in smaller scale tests. But I think we are starting to see some green shoots now, where I think you said, I think it's the time latency of actually giving it enough data and enough time to really start working, testing it in certain categories on certain clients to start with instead of doing it wholesale. And yeah, I think it's making sure you've got things like brand exclusions and the resting that seem to be the thing that is the key to making it work
Yeah.
correctly. I think it's interesting though, because more of like us as a commercial point, and for us it's not necessarily taken away from time. Like, we're just having to manage it slightly differently. The team aren't saying, oh yeah, we've got this new tool and it's taking less time to use. It's finding different ways to manipulate it and get the results we want. But interesting point on DSA. I'm very certain DSA is going to be going the way of a dodo and probably sunset. I reckon 2026. We're seeing all the patterns with like moves to broad match years ago, like where that's being pushed heavily. Obviously
Yeah.
AI Max, even P Max, taking in different infantry as well. I think we are probably going to see DSA die a death at some point. I'm not sure if you agree, but
I
I
think
feel it's there.
I think you're right. I feel like very sentimentally attached to these things. The same when
Yeah.
modified broad went out. I was like, I loved just putting pluses in front of it and doing that. So it's the same thing for DSA. I think you're absolutely right. I've loved using it, but there are kind of better tools out there, and Google is definitely pushing us in the way of using these. I say black box, it's not black box if we really kind of get into nuts and bolts of it, but these more black box automation tools. And I think that's a real danger for advertisers that aren't using an agency, that don't have freelance specialists and don't have that much in-house resource. If you're a business leader that's maybe only got a couple of £1,000s to spend on ads and you're just winging it yourself through smart campaigns, PMax, AI Max, automatically generated assets, which looks terrible when it stitches them together and makes a YouTube video, it's a terrible experience. Yes, Google will spend your money. Yes, you might get a few results if people are searching for your brand, but ultimately, it's not great. So, whilst all these things are coming out, it's really important, like we keep referring to, that you've got that human that knows their stuff at the end of the day to make the right decisions for a client.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's, yet again, looping back to the start of what we've all been saying is humans at the core of what we do is still going to be pretty paramount, especially in paid media.
Yeah,
But it's not going away anytime soon. Strategy is probably the most important thing that we can do for clients now.
absolutely. 100% agree. Sweet. Let's do a quiz if you're up
Good
for
on a
that.
quiz, yeah, why not?
I feel I'm the quiz master,
Yeah.
and you get you to think about some interesting things here. So, to sort of finish off the episode, I want to ask you a couple of questions. Really interesting to get your thoughts on it. Play along at home if you want to as well. First question is, it's an interesting one about ChatGPT 4 Turbo. How many tokens do you think it can process in a single prompt?
Oh,
Very technical on this. But
how many tokens do I think it can? I'm just trying to think. So if you pull up the side window and have a look at how many tokens it's used, especially if you use the API and you can look at token usage, I'm going to say, I'm going to hesitate to say it's more than I think, but less than what it could be, which sounds really daft. I'm going to say I reckon about 100,000 tokens ish.
okay,
I think just from my personal usage of like trying to max out what I can and can't do, and I've got close to 100,000 when I've looked at real large data sets, and I'm also doing anything that involves video as well. So yeah,
cool.
I've never reached that amount, but I'm
Yeah.
assuming that could be about right.
Yeah, well, before I really answer, it'd be really good to get your take on this. That for context for people at home, the token is probably like a part of a word, even, or it's not necessarily just based on words, is
No,
it?
no.
It's kind of the data that sits behind that.
Yeah, it's like the data density of how it processes. Or that's my understanding anyway.
Yeah,
Is that it's not word related, it's not number related, it's just the density of the data it's trying to process.
absolutely, and that depends on words that are related to it and
Yeah,
all the
yeah.
kind of the network and the spider. Well, the big reveal, it's 128,000.
Oh,
So you weren't that far off at
you know,
all.
I'm impressed with that because
Yeah.
I've never even thought about it.
First time I've been answering, showing you the questions. That's about the same as a 300-page book, which is pretty long, right?
Pretty
Just a
impressive. Yeah.
single prompt that it can mash all that data and probably give you an outcome in a few seconds, maybe. So really, really interesting stuff. The second one is, how many AI generated ads does Meta say that are being created per day across its platforms, do you reckon?
Oh, yeah. Again, I reckon this is a lot. I'm gonna say like there's like 50,000 or something mad.
It is even madder than that. So apparently these stats, 3 million ads
What?
3 million ads a day. We'll have to fact check this
I
maybe,
suppose
but
if you're looking at Advantage Plus and the different like things that apparently uses AI, yeah,
add
makes sense.
variations,
Yeah,
square
yeah,
portrait landscape.
yeah. I'm way off the mark, and now I've realised how silly my answer sounds.
But that's crazy, 3 million.
That is mad.
And that'll only go up, right?
Oh
3
yeah.
million. And the final one, what's the average time saved per marketeer per week using AI according to Adobe's 2025 data?
Ooh, I'm gonna say 5 hours. Is
That's
it?
it. That's it.
Yeah, I think I've seen this stat elsewhere. I
Right,
think I've
okay.
read that. I think I've read the study that Adobe have put out. That's what I think I do know
That's
about.
what it is,
But
yeah.
we're seeing it anyway. Like we're
Yeah.
seeing the use of AI, especially in reporting, is massively speeding up reporting for us. Because let's be honest, it's the biggest pain in the ass for a lot of marketers is downloading reports, putting them into a nice, usable, digestible format. If you can get AI to do it for you,
Yeah.
you're onto a bit of a winner.
Absolutely agree. You know what the big thing I was thinking about this the other day with that is definitely in the camp of do that, like get data in a simple, clean, digestible way for your client using AI. But actually, there's a part of me that thinks we need to be deep diving into the data to understand it for our clients because the context that we just give it to an AI bot may not necessarily know we've got a sale coming up, what the P&L looks like,
Yeah.
all that kind of stuff. There's something a bit cathartic, I think, about going into a big old Excel document and doing a pivot table yourself and really understanding the data. So I'm doing that, but I'm also, like you say, I'm definitely using AI we're doing that to really, like, as of today in my company, is just trying to understand how to get onboarding, reporting, and operations in a way that's more seamless, so that we
Yeah.
just don't need to have hundreds of emails going back and to.
No, I completely get it, and I think you are right. But providing context from a human perspective is 100% needed. Whether that is going into an Excel file and pivoting, or using some big VLOOKUP, it's finding the nuggets that matter to clients, not telling them that CPCs have gone up or down, which is realistically what we should be handling with AI or automation. But yeah,
Yeah.
completely agree.
Nice. I think there's been loads in that episode. I think it's been a case of use AI. There's loads of good stuff out there, but use it with care as well,
Yeah.
and always have that human-led content. So hopefully you guys have enjoyed this episode. If you have, please give the episode a subscribe or a like on YouTube. Follow us on Spotify as well, and we'll talk to you guys in the next episode for even more AI and performance marketing stuff with the Prompted Podcast.
Cheers,
Goodbye.
guys.